Hello everyone, welcome back. I don't have tea. I was about 15 minutes ago when I ended the first part. I just didn't make any. It didn't sound good when I went to do it. So, this is part 2. This is requested. This is Mohamed requested. Sorry, my back itches. And he's about to get into part 3. This is part 2, but he's about to start talking about, and the third thing, I believe. So without much talking, let's get into it.
So when his people loved him, and he imported a theology, then the people followed. And we can add a third reason here, and that is that there must have been at least 2,000 years since the time of Ibrahim to Amr ibn Luhay. We talked about this in the second or third lesson. How many years between Ibrahim and our time? At least 2,000 years must have gone by between Ibrahim and Ismail and Amr ibn Luhay. So we have now, therefore, a long time where there's no guidance, there's no prophets, where the message of the prophets has become diluted, where ignorance prevails. And these are the three factors then. Number one, inferiority complex. You think that a civilization is better, everything must be right about them. Number two, the person who says it has credentials. He's prestigious. And number three, ignorance. Now wallahi, these three factors, we need to understand them right now as we speak in 2011. Because wallahi, our religion is being bombarded by a lot of people. And we have the exact same three factors. People are saying very strange things. People are wanting us to accept complete variations of our religion. Why? Wallahi, the exact same three things. Number one is inferiority complex towards another civilization, which might indeed be the most powerful, technologically, militarily, might have the most civilization in some aspects, but that doesn't mean that morally, theologically, ethically, they are the leaders of the world. We have izzah through our Quran and Sunnah, and we have the truth, and simply because a nation is more powerful than us militarily, it doesn't mean that they are more closer to the truth than us. Number two, we have people with lots of credentials, people who are being promoted by others as being the reformers and whatnot, that these are the people we need to listen to. These are the Martin Luthers of Islam that we're being told, right? And they have, mashallah, PhDs and whatnot from the fanciest universities. And they have the gift of the tongue, and they have publications, and they are famous, and they're very intelligent, just like Amr ibn Luhay was accepted. And number three, ignorance. The average Muslim does not know his religion inside out. And then when somebody comes and speaks in generic slogans, then it's very easy to be mesmerized. It's very easy to fall prey. And wallah, it might not be maybe as bad as shirk, but still, we're facing an onslaught of changing of the...
I think you can say that anyone who has the ability to just talk to people, and their ability to communicate, people like that have the ability to, not for everyone, but to some people, sway their perception or their belief in things based on not being right, but just based on that person's ability to be persuasive. And you could say that in any aspect of life. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be on anything. Some people are just really good at convincing other people who aren't necessarily mentally grounded in a belief. So there's a saying that I've heard before that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. But that you could also say if you don't believe in anything, or if you don't believe in something, then you're susceptible to anything, because you don't have any. And I don't mean this to be faith-based, but it's just more based in anything. If you don't have structure in your life where you're like structure or a belief system, not necessarily religious, but a belief in, you're going to go about your life and you're going to just be good. You're not going to try to hurt people. You're not going to scam people. You're not going to do any of this stuff. You have like a moral structure in your life. Some people don't. Some people believe that no matter what's happening in the world, in their country, in their city, on their street, they are somehow being oppressed, being controlled, being undervalued, underappreciated, and those people are going to look for anyone. And you got those persuasive people that come along and tell them everything that they want to hear. You are being forgotten. You're being stepped on, walked over. And you can convince those people to push away, fight those people, not literally, but fight against those people who are doing this to you. The truth is, there isn't anyone doing that to you. You just don't have enough common sense to understand that the situation you're in is because your own, how do I say it? The path that you have walked on, if you were to stop and look behind yourself, you're only going to see those footprints leading up to you. You walked that path. Doesn't matter what anyone else says to you, you made that decision to go down that path. So when you hit this point where you're like, I'm going to rage out, and you look back, that was you who walked there. That's your fault. You're responsible for your actions. I don't know if I've gotten off the path of what I was originally talking about or not. Oh, it's those people who are easily susceptible to things. Like, in the end, you listened to somebody who convinced you that what you were doing was correct. But in the end, what did it get you? Nothing. You believed in somebody who threw out lies and made you believe things. Now I feel like I'm getting political. So we'll just continue.
Faith, and alhamdulillah, there are people that are talking about this and against this and correcting these misconceptions, but I think it's very pertinent to discuss these three factors of Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i. So, Amr ibn Luhay, as we said, lived around 400 or 500 years before the coming of the Prophet ﷺ. There are even narrations, and Allah knows best, these are simply found in the books of history, we're never going to know if they're sure or not, that shaitan inspired him through a dream, because shaitan also inspires.
He even drinks water, cool. I'm looking over like my glass is empty. Or is it full? I'm listening to him. But everything, just the way he is just like, I appreciate it.
By the way, shaitan also sends wahi. Shaitan gives wahi. And Allah Azza wa Jal also gives wahi. But the wahi of shaitan comes from him. And it is evil. And Allah's wahi is pure and comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says in the Quran, وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ. That shayateen inspire their people so that they can come and argue and debate with you. So shaitan himself gives wahi. So there are some books of history that mention that shaitan inspired, i.e. through a dream, through whispering, to Amr ibn Luhay, the names of the original idols that first began idolatry on this earth. And these are names mentioned in the Quran. How did idolatry begin? Allah mentions in the Quran. The people of Nuh were the first people to invent idolatry. وَقَالُوا لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَاعًا وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَصْرَ. 5 names. And Ibn Abbas mentions the story. And this is, you can imagine, this is at a time when there's only one village on earth. There's only one civilization. And these 5 people, complicated names, but these are the original men. Wad, Suwa', Yaghuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. These 5 people were righteous men, good people. And when they died, the people built images, statues, icons of them to remind them of their piety. And slowly but surely, as generations kept on going, instead of just looking at the statue to be reminded of the piety, they began worshipping the statue. It's a stepping stone, as shaitan used it. So it is said that shaitan inspired Amr ibn Luhay to resurrect these 5 idols. And subhanAllah, in ways we have to explain that these 5 idols were in fact worshipped in Arabia when the Prophet ﷺ came. Even though they had not been worshipped for millennia. And yet when the Prophet ﷺ came, there was one tribe that had Wad, one tribe that had Suwa, one tribe that had Yaghuth, that had Nasr. All of these were there. How were these names resurrected? Some books of history say it was this man, Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuza'i. And he put one stone in front of the Kaaba, and this is the Hubal. And then from this, people began proliferating idols. How so? Well, the first thing that they did is that they began worshipping, this is really interesting, they began worshipping the stones that the Kaaba was built with. How so? We learn from the traditions that whenever a caravan left Makkah, they would chip away and take a rock from the Kaaba. And they would take this rock as being equivalent to an idol. And wherever they went, they would then put the rock there and then worship this stone. What was the stone? The building blocks of the Kaaba. Now, we as Muslims, this is something a lot of people don't think about, we don't consider the bricks of the Kaaba to be sacred and holy. The bricks of the Kaaba are just clay and sand. It is the location that is holy. It's not the marble of the floor. It's not the silk covering of the Kaaba. It's not the bricks that the Kaaba is used to build with. It is the place that Allah created. And the Kaaba, a lot of people don't know this, is rebuilt every few decades. It's just like any structure. How long does a building last? You know the last reconstruction of the Kaaba, who can guess when it happened? The current Kaaba that we see now, who knows when was this Kaaba built? The people who live and visit frequently know, around 10 years ago. The current Kaaba is literally only 10 years old, that's it. There is nothing holy about the Kaaba.
So, we'll get back into history. I like Washington. This is a little mini... kind of hard to see, but this is there you go. This is the back portico, and that's the front. It's a little stand. Oh, Mount Vernon. When you look at that, you look at you see the building, and you instantly think of the history and how, you know, you're looking at the same structure that Washington saw, right? And you're just like, oh, this is great, and you are. But that outside has been repainted and sandblasted. Parts have been replaced. Decks have been taken off the side where his house, on the side of the house, there would have been like a little deck on the second floor where he could have walked out on. That was falling apart. They had to get rid of it. The interior has been changed. You know, new wood has been put up and then painted to look rustic, because it's to be fair, the original structure was built 300, right closer to 400 years ago, made out of wood. But when we show up as tourists, we don't think about that. We think about what we're walking into is the exact same thing that he walked into. Because you don't want to walk in and think, okay, 13% of this house is accurate to his death in 1799. You don't think about that. I don't think about that when I think about that structure. If people say that structure's 2,000 years old, and I'm just like, damn, that's 2,000 years old. I would love to touch a 2,000-year-old structure. I'm not saying it's 2,000 years. I'm just throwing out a number. And then somebody's like, well, technically it was redone 10 years ago. But in my mind, yeah, but it's still 2,000 years old. Well, the idea, the concept, I think we got some loud old bugs outside. But like the concept, the idea of it, of Washington's home, is 300 plus years old, 400 years old. but it's not. And that's something that I think we all, you don't, but as an outsider, I look at that and I think, well, yeah, of course it's that old, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I think I lost track of what I was saying, but I think you might have gotten it earlier, and then I went off course.
It is the area, it is the land of Makkah that is sacred. The Kaaba comes and goes, and after another 50 years, it's going to grow weak, the foundations are going to be crumbling, they're going to have to rebuild it. But the people of the Makkah at the time, they didn't realize this. They let paganism seep in. So they would take bricks of the Kaaba, and then they would worship those bricks. And of course, this is the stepping stone to idolatry. Another Sahabi who accepted Islam, Abu Raja al-Utaridi. Abu Raja al-Utaridi mentions that before Islam came, we used to worship rocks and stones. Hadith is in Sahih Muslim. We used to worship rocks and stones. And if we found a rock that looked more beautiful than the rock we were worshipping, we would throw that rock away and put the other rock in its place. And if we were traveling in the desert and we couldn't find a rock, listen to this, we would gather some sand, put it into a pile, bring a goat, squeeze some milk out of it to make the sand firm, and then do tawaf around that sand. Now, wallahi, it is mind-boggling to think intelligent people will do this, but if you go to some countries on earth, I'm not going to mention anything here because people might get offended, but if you go to some places on earth, wallahi, every street corner, you go to the middle of the jungles, and you will find people have built a mausoleum or a structure or a pagan temple, and you look and you see there's a rock with red painting or yellow painting on it. Just a rock. And you find people putting meat in front of the rock and putting butter and putting, sweets in front of the rock. And it's mind-boggling that to this day, people can act like this. That they're going to give their acts of worship, they're going to prostrate, they're going to lower their heads to a wood or a rock or a stone. And when you read this, you wonder, subhanAllah, but then you see it with your own two eyes and you see, no, this is still here. And then we talk about those who do this in our own religion, in our own culture. There are some Muslims who do the same with graves, with saints, with mausoleums. The same thing. You see it in many Muslim countries. You go and you find Muslims literally bowing their head down in front of the grave of a saint, of a wali, of a pir, doing tawaf around the grave. And you wonder, where is La ilaha illallah? This is exactly what the Jahili Arabs did. One of the most disgusting stories, to be honest, is that of Na'ila and Asaf. Na'ila and Asaf. Na'ila and Asaf were two idols. Na'ila was put on Safa and Asaf was put on Marwa. And so the Quraysh, when they did tawaf, they would touch Na'ila and Asaf when they're going back and forth. When Islam came, the Muslims felt hesitant. How can we do sa'i when it's meant to commemorate Na'ila and Asaf? So Allah revealed in the Quran, the verses that we all know, Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah. Safa and Marwa are holy before Na'ila and Asaf were put there. Safa and Marwa are from the signs of Allah, before Na'ila and Asaf ever came. Safa and Marwa are from the signs of Allah. So whoever does Hajj, then let him, there is no sin on you if you do tawaf, i.e. sa'i, between them. There's no sin, meaning don't feel guilty. There's no evil in Safa and Marwa. What is Na'ila and Asaf? Aisha says that since we were children, we were hearing the story of Na'ila and Asaf, the legends that they have. Na'ila and Asaf, may Allah forgive us for even narrating such disgusting things, but this is what the books of history say. They were two lovers, male and female. Na'ila and Asaf, Asaf is the male and Na'ila is the female. They were two lovers, and they could not find a place to be intimate because they were not married, except the interior of the Kaaba. So they consummated their romance inside the Kaaba. And as a punishment, Allah destroyed them and solidified and petrified them right then and there. Now when the Quraysh came across them, they actually took them as a miracle. And they put these two on Safa and Marwa. And that is why the Muslims said, how can we do sa'i between Safa and Marwa? So Allah said, look, Safa and Marwa have nothing to do with Na'ilah and Asaf. So this is the story of Na'ilah and Asaf. Again, it shows you the paganism that the Jahili Arabs were upon. And we also know that when the Prophet ﷺ conquered Mecca, there were around 360 idols around the Kaaba. 360 idols of various shapes and sizes. Some idols were in the shape of full humans. Some were in the shape of animals. Most of them were in the shape of half human, half animal. And you know, to this day, the children's fairy tales, half horse and half, human and half lion, and just like the Sphinx of Egypt or, the centaurs, this type of theology. We read in the books of history that most of these idols were humanoid. A little bit of human, a little bit of animal. And they would then put these statues around the Kaaba. Also, we learn that the Quraysh had the theology that Allah has daughters, and that these daughters are His angels. And they would worship the angels. They would worship the angels thinking that these are the daughters of Allah. So they would consider the angels to be the daughters of Allah. Now the Arabs did not have a specified theology. They didn't have a creed. We as Muslims, we have a creed. We believe in Allah and the angels, the Day of Judgment, Qadr. We have a creed. We need to understand that societies that are idolatrous, paganistic societies, they don't have creeds. For example, Hindus are the most clear example of an idolatrous religion. Hindus don't have creeds. If you ask 10 different Hindus what their religion is, you'll get 10 different answers, right? Because there is no unified creed. There's no aqidah, as we call it. And one Hindu can worship one God, another can worship another God, and you can have 6 million Hindus worshipping 6 million gods, different. And each one has a different perception of what his God can or cannot do. This is all legit in their religion because there's no unified creed. The same goes for the Arabs, that there was no unified creed. Many of them believed in a Day of Judgment, many of them denied it. Many of them believed this, many of them didn't. There's no unified creed. But the one thing that they all agreed upon is that we need to worship these idols to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have some form of idolatry. Does this mean that the entire society was idolatrous? No. History records that there were some exceptions to this rule. And it is very interesting to look at these exceptions and to derive some benefit and wisdom from this. And the books of Seerah mention that there were a handful of people called Hanif. Hunafa, plural Hunafa, singular Hanif. And Hanif means turning away from. So the Hanif or Hunafa are turning away from shirk and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Hanif means. That they're turning away from shirk and they're turning to Allah.
Okay, we're going to pause it there. This one wasn't quite 15 minutes, but the last one ran a little over. So this is part 2. This was, as I said earlier, requested by Muhammad. Let me say that again. This was requested by Muhammad. And he donated to the channel. And would you like to do that too? You certainly can. There's a thanks button on there. You click on it. Donate to the channel. Anything and everything would be appreciated. If not, I get it. No harm, no foul. It's tough times. But what is free, if you're not subscribed to the channel, then subscribe, please. And if you are, give it a thumbs up. And there are some people who don't like when I yawn. So, out of respect, I was a half yawn. Kind of went away at the end. A little disappointing. But to the people who don't like it, that was for you. And last but not least, I am going to go make some tea now. I really do want it. As for people who don't like coughs. And we're going to end this right now by saying have a good day, have a good night.